Hey everyone, welcome to another tier list video. This is going to be for patch 11.5. And in this patch, actually, a lot of really cool and awesome characters got a lot of really nice buffs. So we're going to kind of just be going over a tier list on what characters I've seen be super effective so far in ranked this split and last split as well. And also, we're going to be kind of breaking down patch notes a little bit. This is mostly going to be for ranked conquest, of course. And I play at pretty much a master grandmaster level. I'm grandmaster right now. So this is kind of like for a higher level conquest, but this can still be applied at all ranks. I actually get asked a lot on stream, like what's a good support to sort of climb with, and a few of these on here I think are really good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over each role, and I'm just gonna kind of talk about each character, uh, and why I put it into that role, and then also I'll add these to the bans as well, like what characters I think should be banned. So let's just kind of start with support real quick, since this is my main role. This is the role I'm best at. So Fafnir. Oh my goodness, this character feels amazing. So Fafnir has actually been getting like buffed a lot recently in a few different patches, increased dragon form time, just like increased buffs here and there. And in this patch, he got a couple buffs. One sort of direct buff and then one indirect buff. So the direct buff is he can now de-transform a lot quicker, which is really, really nice for him. It's actually saved my life like quite a few times. But the other really big buff is to him and to other characters like Yorm as well. And so if we look here at the notes, these characters can now proc item effects on their breath, essentially, which is really, really good. So before, if you guys didn't know, they couldn't use things like any of their ring items like Telekines or Demonic Grip or anything like that while Fafnir was in his dragon form and while Yorm is just in his regular form because their breath didn't proc those items, but now they can, which is really, really crazy. So Fafnir has actually, in my opinion, has risen to sort of the top ranks of support right now because he can actually build demonic and you can shred so many protections with that. You can actually just solo carry his late game with demonic as your only damage item if you want to. I've done it multiple times in multiple games. This character actually just feels amazing right now. And what a lot of people don't realize is Fafnir in his dragon form has a 20% prot shred on his one in his dragon form. So essentially, when you combine that with demonic, which is 30% prot shred, right? When you get all the stacks and you get them pretty much instantly because they now stack off Fafnir's dragon breath, you actually, and it's cumulative, you actually have 50% prot shred. And I even tested this in the jungle practice with a friend as well. It shreds exactly 50% of an enemy's prots, which is insane if you think about dragon transforming, stunning a tank with your one, and then obviously just proccing demonic on them, which again applies instantly. So yeah, this character is just insane right now. And if you want to build Void tomorrow, that's another 10%. So you actually will be shredding 60% of their protections. Again, absolutely an insane support right now. Highly recommend that you guys try to play him if you haven't. He's really fun too, like super, super, super fun. And I think he's in a really, really good spot. So Fafnir up here, and I even will go to the extent of saying like he should probably be a ban if you're not looking to like play him at all. He's not like a prio ban, but if you're looking for something to ban, then I think Fafnir is actually a pretty decent ban if you are encountering a lot of Fafs. Sobek needs no introduction. This character has been OP for the last season and a half. He's still just really good. Again, super OP character. He's just really tanky. I've broken him down in my other tier list video, so I don't want to go like too far into it. But very tanky, has great setup, and it's just really hard to kill, especially if you go prophetic cloak on him. So I would put him also in your bans list. Bacchus is another character I try to tell people, hey, listen, if you want to get out of low elo, Bacchus is really good. This character, in my opinion, has kind of like a curve to him. So he's really good in the early game, but then he starts to just fall towards the late game. He's still really effective in the late game, but the problem is once you hit late game, you're jumping in and carries now have all the pen online, right? They have their kins procs. He's going to feel like really, really rough. So I think to sort of carry this character through the late game, you definitely want to go prophetic on him. If you don't go prophetic, you're going to have a hard time. So you want that extra damage mitigation. But his early game, he has like one of the best laning phases right now out of any support. In fact, I think it's probably the best laning phase out of any support. He gets 2 CC abilities at level 2, right? Flop and burp, healing reduction, a ton of damage. So if you're looking to support and just want a W key, Bacchus is a really, really good character. Again, my only advice is try to build prophetic on him. Terra got a massive buff. Terra now, I think her 3 now just double heals. Not double heals. It does 2x the healing essentially. So like 2x the healing on her 3. They reduce the time on her ult. I believe they also reduced the time on her too. I'll put the buffs on the top right of the screen, but Terra is actually really strong now. I thought she was strong before, but now they just kept buffing her, I guess. Like they buffed her 2 patches ago and they made her really strong. I guess they saw that nobody was really playing her that much. I played her, I thought she was really good. But they buffed her again, and she just feels insane right now. So definitely try out Terra games. Your healing's gonna be nuts. I believe you heal like with your 3 alone, you heal you and your allies like 40 HP per second, 20 HP per tick, and I believe each tick is like 0.5 seconds. So about 40 HP per second. But definitely try her out. Ares. Ares is all around just a super solid support. I've said this in the past. He's either going to hard win you a game or probably hard lose you a game. If it's a bad Ares game, characters that have a lot of root CCs like range CCs, that have a lot of lockdown for Ares that he can't get out of, probably don't want to pick Ares. But if they have a lot of characters that rely off their dashes, for example, Kakulin or Achilles or Wukong, these guys sort of rely off dashes, mobility. Then Ares is going to be a pretty solid pick. This character is still very, very strong. I highly recommend if you're going to play him, build cooldown, right? Even if you miss chains, you'll get them up really fast, or even if you're hitting chains, you'll get them up really fast because off the first chain shot, even if you hit it, it still goes on cooldown immediately. So if you space out your chains correctly and you have like max cooldown, you almost actually get your chains back up by the time your previous chains end. Play Ares if they have a lot of escapes and a lot of mobility. Athena, again, covered her in my last video. She's just strong right now. She's super easy, support on training wheels, right? Mobile, anybody across the map. She's gotten a lot of nerfs in the last couple of patches, but they're mostly just number nerfs. They haven't really meant much because I think her kit's honestly been OP for the last couple of years. Just not a lot of people were playing her as much. I guess she was sort of like hidden in the shadows, but strong character. That's for the main characters. Now, these last 3 I'm a little bit biased towards. Said this in the last tier list video, but Khepri I'm always going to kind of put up in a support tier list. I personally love Khepri. He's a favorite of mine. I always think he's going to be good. If you're good with Khepri, I think he's solid in just about every single meta. You can pick him if you want to. Artio, I think, is sort of like a hidden gem pick right now as well. A lot of people can't play Artio that well. So if you can't play Artio that well, you don't really feel like learning her all that much, probably not the best pick for you. However, if like she's sort of like I don't want to say she's a budget Ares, but that's kind of what she is a little bit. If Ares is banned, they have a lot of, again, mobile characters. Artio has great lockdown. See, the thing about Ares and Artio is that they have really, really good lockdown, like super long duration lockdown. Ares, I believe, if you space out chains correctly, is about an 8-second cripple time. Artio 6 seconds, right? Once you get that to max rank, and you can cripple multiple people at once, and of course you have other, CC stuns and slows and roots and all that kind of jazz. So Artio is really, really good. She just doesn't have that pull ult, but her fight's like extremely good. So if you can play her, do it. If you can't, probably don't want to pick her up. Word of advice is one really good combo is when you stun, instead of using any other ability after you stun, automatically switch stances and throw down or cripple. Because you want to make sure that you get that cripple off. Oftentimes I see people making a mistake. They'll stun, then they'll, do the little bear claw swipe, whatever in that form. Don't do that. Don't do that, right? That damage isn't going to really amount to much, and they'll get out of the stun by the time your cripple comes up typically. And so what you want to do is stun, transform into the other stance, and then use that cripple, and then you can kind of do what you want from there. But that's a little tip for her. Last but not least for the support column, Maui. This character, so Maui's, I think, at a bit of a weird spot right now because Maui actually got some really, really nice buffs. They completely removed the movement speed debuff penalty while he's using his one. They actually made it like 15% stronger when sort of like pulling somebody to you. So he actually feels really good. But at the same time, I don't think, like, if you weren't having too much success or luck with Maui before, I don't really think these changes are going to affect you because his kit's still pretty much the same. Again, he just got some really nice buffs. And I still feel like people that struggled with Maui are still going to continue to struggle, if that makes sense. And so, if you're not really a Maui player, I would probably try to stray away from this character. But if you are consistently hitting your one, he definitely feels nice. I highly recommend giving him a try. But for supports, these 9 supports, I think, are going to be your sort of bread and butter right now. I think these are really, really good. Putting a little bit more emphasis on these 6 right here. Again, these 3 I'm a little bit biased towards because I like playing them a lot and I have a lot of success on them. But these 6 in particular, I think, you guys will have a lot of success on. All right, so ADC, we have a couple characters, these two that are pretty much the same. I'm just gonna go over these two real quick because they've been the same for the last like season and a half, just like Sobek. Honor, Hachi. They got some actually Hachi got some debuffs this patch. I think he still feels really good. I think unless they completely sort of like change Hachi's passive or hit him with some insanely hard number nerfs, I think he'll be bad, but he's still one of the safest hunters in the game while still being able to output some of the most damage. So Hachi, I still think is going to be up there if you want to pick ADC. On her, same exact thing, right? On her's got that kit, the same exact kit. He's got a lot of CCs, very hard to fight in dual lane, and overall, like these two characters are just completely still solid to pick, still fun to pick. Oleron, he's sort of like a new face, a new mention right now into our tier list. I haven't put Oleron in a tier list since like I think the last time he was OP was like beginning of season 10, so it's been about over a year. So Oleron got some really nice buffs, and let's go ahead and take a look at them. So let's look at these Oleron buffs. He gets an increased critical strike chance cap from 70 to 100%. So pretty much this says, okay, before this was capped off at 70%, now he can legit crit every single auto if you have enough power. This scales off power. And yes, you can get there. I've gotten there without a 3k pot and without FG. So I've gotten there with just a red pot and full build before. I'll show you guys a solid build to build an Oleron for those of you who haven't really played him. But I think it's a really solid build. And I'll put that up top right. And increased damage on critical strikes from 30 to 40%. So his crits are now just, not only is he critting more, but now they're just doing more damage. And remember too, Spectral actually doesn't counter Oleron. So before, back in season 9, Spectral did counter Oleron and it made the character completely useless. And I think it was season 9, might have been season 10, but I'm pretty sure it was season 9. And so they actually removed it so Oleron no longer gets countered by Spectral. They didn't increase the power requirement, but you're still going to get to that point. Focus Light. So now, before, when you charged up Oleron's 1, it was pretty much just giving extra range, no extra damage. Now it actually goes up to 20% increased damage at full charge, which is really, really good. And remember, this ability also crits. So not only are you getting more damage on the base ability itself, but you also have increased critical strike chance by 10%. So this ability itself is getting a lot more damage. And then lastly, for his buffs, we have decreased cooldown on this. This is a nice buff, but really we're just focusing on these two. The other big thing too is Cyclopean Ring also got a buff, which is an indirect buff to Oleron and other ADCs, other magical ADCs, of course, as well. But the passive damage now increased from 8 to 9% of maximum HP. This is kind of like a Kins in a sense. It's a Kins that can't proc every second. And the cooldown per proc got decreased from 10 to 8 seconds. Now, what's cool about this too is if you hit auto attacks while this is on cooldown, it actually decreases the cooldown of this passive by 2 seconds as well. So you can get up faster than 8 seconds, essentially. But those are... So all the Olo buffs combined with the ring buff, the indirect buff, has made Olo a really, really good character. So before, Olo, in my opinion, was just sort of like a early game pressure bot who didn't really scale late game well. Now he's an early game pressure bot that also actually scales really well to late game, concerning the fact that his crits now do more damage and he can crit more often. And his 1 obviously does a lot more damage. So try out Oleron, he's super fun as well. Only problem is positioning can be a little freaky. And then certain characters that have a lot of CC immunity, such as like Vamana or like Cthulhu or Kamazots, are known counters to Oleron. So you kind of have to be a little bit wary when you pick him. You might, feed your brains out. But at the same time, too, character has insane pressure, really hard to fight. If you know how to play him, or if you just want to get better with him, because again, he is really fun, I highly recommend playing this character. Nut is another character, I think, really, really good at early pressure. I don't know if you guys can like sort of notice a trend or see a trend, but it's about early game pressure hunters right now. But Nut does a lot of really nice early game pressure. There's a really good build people are calling the EU build, which I'll post up on the top right. But essentially, it gives her crit chance as well. So not only is she going to have really good early game pressure, but she's also going to scale to late game really, really well as well. So the only thing with Nut is she is pretty easy to sort of lock down. Again, she does have a little bit of mobility. She does have a dash, but the dash is super, super short. Like I believe it's shorter than Merlin Flicker even. And so she's really easy to kind of like camp and chase out. So you just have to be a little bit aware when you're playing her. Make sure you're getting awards up in dual lane, all that kind of jazz. And then we already went over these two characters. And then lastly, just going over Heim. Heim, I think, sort of another hidden gemish character. He I really like Heim, so I'm super biased here. It's kind of like these three supports. Almost, it's actually pretty much like Kepri, but I do think Heim, if you're going like Pen Kins build, just does a lot of damage. He's super safe. He's always going to scale well the late game. He's not going to have as much early pressure as like some of these characters over here, but I do think Heim is just in a really good spot right now. His autos hit really, really hard. And if you like Heim, play Heim. If you don't like Heim, don't play Heim. So up next we have junglers. First off, we have Lance. Lance has been really, really good for the last two patches, like this current patch and last patch. Lance got some buffs last patch, and he has just felt amazing. I think it's just because the sheer amount of damage that character can do, and he's also a really good flex from jungle to solo. I don't know if you guys have watched any of Haddock's stream, for example, but Haddox and some other soul laners have made this character look really OP in solo by getting on the horse, getting off the horse, getting back on the horse, and essentially having like almost 100% shield like all the time, which is like really, really aids, like having a shield tank the main portion of the damage. But yeah, his damage feels insane right now, his damage output, and his survivability is also really, really good. So I highly recommend you guys try out Lance if you haven't already. And just like most of the characters on this list, he's very, very fun. Bastet is another character that got some buffs. So Bastet actually was starting to feel really good last patch, and they decided to sort of buff her. So let's kind of take a look at these buffs real quick. So looking at these buffs, they did nerf the cat HP from 3 to 2. However, they made the cat damage and CC immune now until it hits an enemy or reaches its max range. So you can't do damage to the cat until one of these two conditions are met, which is kind of crazy. And also the initial hit this ability now roots all enemies within like a certain radius, not just the target that it's going on. So you can kind of attribute it to like a Scylla one, right? Whenever you get Scylla one to max rank, it roots people in like an AoE around that person that you hit. It's the same thing with Bastet Cat now. So Bastet actually does feel really good. She's super annoying, and she's actually really good in the ADCs as well because of like the cats being able to sort of like block some damage from ADCs. But yeah, I thought she was good before the patch, and I think she's even better now. I've seen a lot of Bastets in my games recently, and I've even started banning her as well. Like I would put her on the ban list because she's just so annoying to deal with, especially if you're trying to like carry the game on like mid or ADC. It's just going to be really, really hard to deal with the Bastet. So if you guys haven't already, try to ban Bastet. If you're not seeing her that much in your ranked games, that's completely fine. You might be free from her kitty rage, but at least in higher levels, she is getting played quite a bit. Not every game, but a lot. And she's to the point where I've just been banning her a lot recently, and she's been getting banned by other players as well. So I would put her on the ban list. Next up, we have Tsukiyomi. I think Tsukiyomi is a little bit of a hidden gem. This character just does a lot of damage. Not really much else to it. This character's AoE damage is absurd, but he does have a bit of a positioning issue and an ult issue. Like, you have to know how to play him. He's not... I don't think he's, like, sort of like a noob-friendly jungler, if that makes sense. Like, if you don't really know how to play him, you might not do the best with him. But if you do know how to play him, I've seen a lot of players carry games with this character in the last two patches. This patch and the last patch. So definitely try him out. Susano, everybody knows Susano's OP. He's been OP for the last, like, what, 20 million years? So this character needs no explanation. Thor, same thing, right? Thor's been great for the last 3 years plus, in my opinion. Despite some of the nerfs here and there that he's gotten. I mean, this character's been a raid boss of a jungler. Naja's another character I think that's really good, especially if you're at a bit of a lower elo end. So late game Naja, if you're going full damage, late game Naja can actually one-shot enemy carries, right? If they don't have beads and you sash them, get them into your ult, and you hit every crit, which you should be because it's super easy to do. You'll one-shot carries. But Naja's also just really good for setup, and he's just really good at like punishing players, to be honest with you. So if you have like Thoth on your team or really any of like burst mages or anything like that, Naja's just nice setup. And maybe sort of build them hybrid if you want to. Or you can build them one shot as well, but if you build them hybrid and you focus on the setup, I think this character is super nice. So yeah, I think Naja's in a good spot right now. Camazotz, another character I went over a patch or two ago. Very good character. Again, it's going to counter Oleron. Oleron's in a good spot, right? We talked about this earlier. Camazotz is one really big known counter to him. He was played back when Oleron was OP. Beginning of Season 10, Camazotz was banned a lot. Or if he wasn't banned, he was picked a lot because he's a nice counter to Oleron. Reason being is because you have a nice CC immune ult, so you can jump on Oleron, do a lot of burst damage. Oleron's going to try to ult, and then you just ult Oleron's ult, and you still do damage to him, and get to avoid that big force field ult that he has. So Kama's good right now, in my opinion. He's always going to be good. He just does a lot of damage, and he's super good at like punishing mages and really any squishy, and also kind of getting out because of all the iframes and mobility he has. Erlong, I also think still really good. I think he was good last patch. He's good this one. He does abuse Equinox Blade. Equinox has gotten some nerfs, but I've still seen it picked up, and I still think the item's decent. Definitely not as strong as it was when they first released it. I mean, that was just absolutely ridiculous, but it's still like good enough, and I think Erlang just does enough damage right now to be able to do it in jungle. He also can be picked in solo lane as well if you want to, but I think I've seen him like pop off way more in jungle this last 2 patches than I have in solo lane. Serket actually just got some really nice buffs. So the Serket buff is that she is actually now tankier. Her base HP got increased a little bit, and her health per level also got increased. She gets increased range on her 3, which is kind of nice. And the big thing for me, this was the big thing. This is like, whatever. And then this is also the big thing, which is she gets increased damage scaling by 10%. And this is actually really big because remember, Last Breath is a true damage ability, which means that like this extra 10% is going a long way, right? It's not really going to get mitigated. For those of you who don't know what true damage is, true damage essentially goes through all prots. So it doesn't matter if they have 1 prot, it doesn't matter if they have 325 prots, the ability is still going to do the same amount of damage. The only thing that does mitigate true damage, and I think there are quite a few people that don't understand this or know this, is that percent damage mitigation will mitigate a little bit of true damage. For example, Oni Hunter's Garb, right? That gives you about 12%. That mitigates. Prophetic Cloak gives you 15%. That'll help mitigate it. Kuzenbo passive or Bacchus passive will help mitigate it. And also like Spirit Robe, right? Spirit Robe I think is actually really good in Serket because when she ults you, it's a CC proc Spirit Robe, and Spirit Robe gives you a 15% damage mitigation buff for like 4 seconds. And that 15% damage mitigation will essentially reduce Serket's ult by 15%. Even though it's true damage. So those are the things that do go through true damage, but for the most part, regular protections won't. So having 10% scaling extra on Serket ult is actually a lot. Now we're going off into mids. Thoth, been super good for the past like few patches now. Character needs no introduction. He's just still good. If you can play Thoth, just play Thoth. I mean, this character's just busted. I don't know what else to say. You can ban him if you want. I actually haven't been banning him as much recently, but last patch I was banning him like every single game. So Raijin, I think, is actually kind of like a hidden gem right now for the mid lane. Raijin and Zeus. So Zeus, I actually talked about last patch as well being a hidden gem. Zeus is still really good. He's actually feels really strong, like in this patch too. If you can position well with Zeus, play Zeus, I swear you'll just melt everybody. This character is insane. But with Raijin, sort of like a hidden gemish pick. I think people sort of forgot about him. He was OP for a little bit, then they nerfed him and nerfed some of the items that he used, and so people kind of forgot about him. But I do see Raijin get picked up here and there, and every single time I see Raijin get played, he does really well. Very well. Even if it's an L, he's still performing or outperforming the enemy mid laner typically when I see it. So I would add this character to your pool if you're a mid laner. I think this character's cooldowns are still really good, and his damage is still super high. Merlin got some nice little buffs. Let's go on over there. So for the Merlin buffs, his passive got increased damage and increased damage scaling. I don't know how much this matters. I don't think it matters too much, but it's a little bit, right? The other buff that he got is decreased cooldown on his flames. It really this just affects like sort of the early game because as you can see, it still scales to 12 seconds, so it's still like it's not really a buff to any late game fire damage, but it is a nice little buff to the early game because it starts off about 2 seconds sooner. But yeah, Merlin got some buffs to help out his early game. Merlin's always been a super strong late game character. So to help out his early game, I think definitely like adds to it. Going over to Agni, since we just did Zeus, same thing as Thoth. He's an artillery style mage. I think he does a lot of damage, has a lot of stuns. Just a lot of these characters, the reason why I put the characters here on this tier list is because these are characters that I notice that do well in my games a lot. Some might be controversial to you. Sometimes you might not see them because, you know, maybe we're at different ranks, whatever the case. Agni is just another character I've seen have high performance. He just dishes out a lot of damage late game. He has self-peel. For the mages right now, he just seems super strong and super viable. So that's why I put him on this list. Morgan Le Fay is another one of those. Morgan Le Fay interesting because I think she's just really sort of aids to go on, but she doesn't have as much range, of course, as like Thoth or Merlin. But if you have, I think she's like a bit easier to play. She has a really nice CC immune ult, so you're gonna be really good into a character like Ares if they have an Ares pick. You can try her out if you want, but I think these 5 right here are actually really good. And then last but not least, I think Nua is really good, and Nua got a bit of a change. So one of the big changes, and this doesn't just affect Nua, by the way, but one of the big changes in this patch is that pets now proc ability item effects. So for example, Artemis Boar is going to proc Bluestone, right? Or in Heartseeker and Crusher, all those effects. That's what it's pretty much talking about. So as you can guess with Nua, which is kind of, crazy, is they're now going to proc item effects such as like Soul Reaver and all that kind of jazz. And what's crazy is like the Clay Soldiers also reduce prots. So I'm not exactly sure which one comes first, but I believe the prot reduction should come first, and then the Reaver proc comes next, because Reaver's not true damage anymore. It hasn't been for a few seasons now, for a couple years. So it's just percent HP, and it does get mitigated a little bit. But yeah, so these Clay Soldiers can now proc these effects. So I actually think that puts Nua in a pretty good spot. I haven't really seen her too much get played, but I had Veneno in my game, like a few games, like earlier today actually, and he was playing Nua, and he actually just hard carried the game for us. I'm not gonna cap, like he carried the game for us pretty hard. I think he had like 83k damage. Of course, Nua always gets high player damage, but whenever I was dead and I was watching, she just seemed like she was just smoking everybody. So you try out Nua with her changes. I think she does a lot of damage, and also to build like Tablet on her, I believe, as well. I think Tablet's like really, really nice because it'll also proc. Okay, so that's it for the mages. Going on to solos. So I actually think solo's in a really, really good spot right now. I think solo is actually one of the best roles. The Cullen, I think, is your prime solo laner right now. This character got really good buffs. Again, let's head right on over to the buff screen. So here are the Cucullin buffs. Decreased time to transform from 3 to 2 seconds, which is huge, right? 1/3 of the time is gone. You increase the shield health as well, increased root duration, and increased movement speed. You actually almost double the movement speed if this is at max rank, which is kind of crazy to think about. So the chase is really good. I've seen a lot of Cucullins in my game, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. And this character, every single time, is performing. I think this character gets really good early pressure, and his scaling to late game now with these buffs is making him like really, really hard to kill. I actually like saw a Cucullin earlier solo defend an FG, which allowed us enough time to get over there and actually like kill the FG. So I do think Cucullin is a really, really strong character right now in a super good spot. If you haven't been playing him, definitely try him out. If you're solo main and you're trying to rank up, I think this character is one that can really carry games. And speaking of characters that can carry games, Achilles as well. I think Achilles is strong. He was strong last patch. I'll give you guys a little build top right that you can try out on him. I got this build from Eros, and he was absolutely kicking ass with this character. So try Achilles out and see how you guys like him. Wukong is another character. He's been strong. He's been strong for the last couple patches actually now. I think he got overshadowed a little bit when Equinox Blade came out, because Equinox Warriors were... He got some nerfs, but also Equinox Warriors were starting to like really become meta, of course, because Equinox was OP. But Wukong is still really strong. He's been strong for the last season and a half, just like Sobek, just like, on her Hachi, those kinds of characters. So Wukong's always going to be in a good spot. I think these 3 characters are like pretty heavy carry characters right now in Soul Lane. So if you're going to play Soul Lane, really look at these 3. And I think you'll put a lot of work in with them. Next is Vamana. OP character, man. I don't care what rank you're at, all right? I'm so tired of this. Oh, just don't hit him, Dash. Just don't hit Vamana and you're fine. No, that doesn't work. Stop. All right? I literally watch people at any rank, whether it's like bronze rank or whether it's a GM rank, and I'm playing against SPL players that are literally playing Vamana. Okay? This character is just still broken. The thing about Vamana is, yes, if you don't hit him, and sometimes it is definitely good not to hit him. Yes, if you don't hit him, his ult time is reduced, but his initial ult time is still 5 seconds. Okay, so this is 5 seconds of him abusing OP items like Kins, like Equinox, like maybe Xe if he has it, like Animosity. those kinds of items, and he will kill a carry within 5 seconds. Like, he'll kill you. Like, he just will. And there's nothing me as a support can do about it because I can't peel him. What am I going to do? Right? Disarm him? Right? Am I going to put up a wall? No, he goes right through walls. Like, I can provide debuffs, but I can't really stop him. Best thing maybe I could do is like body block. Point being is that this character is still really good. Doesn't matter what rank you are. The saying just don't hit him doesn't really work anymore because he can literally one-shot a carry within 3 seconds. I wouldn't say one shot, but he'll kill a carry within 3 seconds if you guys aren't hitting him, if he's good enough to, stick on the carry. This character is still a really good character, and I think the only time this character is weak is if, he's behind, and of course you guys can just burst him down. The other thing too is that if you're support, please, for the love of God, get Erosion. All right, Erosion is really good against Vamana and gets Slow Curse. Slow Curse has old Ankh effects, right? Ankh's no longer in the game. They kind of combined it with Slow Curse, so now you have anti-shield and anti-heal. It's going to be fantastic against Vamana. You need those items. If you are an ADC, get Envenom XE, please. Envenom XE is the same thing as Slow Curse in the sense that it's going to reduce shielding and reduce healing. You just get the appropriate items to deal with a Vamana. I think late game, again, running from him is just kind of like a silly thing most of the time. If you're against a good Vamana player, it's going to be hard to do. I've literally seen people solo carry with Vamana still this patch and last patch. So the best thing you can do is fight him, and the best way to fight him, of course, is debuffing him by reducing his healing and shielding. So just make sure you get those items. All right, so next up we have Cthulhu. I think Cthulhu is still a good character, or I think he is a good character. He got some changes like I believe it was like last patch that made him a little bit better. So he definitely feels like stronger than he used to. I don't think he's all that. Like, I don't think he's going to be as effective as like these characters here, these three. But I think he's definitely still a solid soul laner if you want to pick him up. I've seen people pop off with this character a few times, but I've also seen this character kind of do some bad things. But I think he's a good character, so he's a solid pick if you want to gravitate towards a magical soul laner. Also, too, he abuses the new Curse Weaver item, which is something that's really cool. So Curse Weaver is an item that you pretty much, if you hit somebody, you place a mark on them. If you hit somebody with an auto attack or an ability, marks them for 4 seconds. So when the marked enemy uses an ability, right? So say, for example, you're, I don't know, up against a Morgan Le Fay, you hit her with your mark, and she decides to use her 3, right? That's an ability. They're going to take 5% of your maximum HP and 5% of your maximum mana. So the big thing here is it's 5% of your maximum HP, right? So obviously you see where I'm going with this. Cthulhu has been known to build a lot of HP items, right? He's really tanky when it comes to HP because his ult also gives him extra HP. So if you have this item on Cthulhu, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. And this is just like marking an enemy and making sure that they use an ability, which of course everybody's going to use an ability. Team fight, why wouldn't they? So you're also going to heal for this amount as well. I haven't really messed around with this item too much, so I'm still trying to figure out like how effective it is, but I have seen people pop off with this item, and it is pretty annoying. It's just extra damage that you're not really thinking about in a team fight. And again, on magical characters like Cthulhu or maybe even Jormungandr, those kinds of characters, it can add up and be pretty aids. And so last but not least, we have Yorm. Yorm, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but he's kind of similar to Faf, where he got some super heavy, like, indirect buffs where it's like now he can actually proc different items. So, for example, Demonic, you can proc that if you want to. Telekines, you can also proc that. And just a lot of ring item effects and other auto attack item effects now that you can proc. So it made him a lot better. Now, do note that the item effects that you do proc are not at 100%. So Demonic is at 100% because it's just, it's a debuff, it's power reduction, but like Telekines, I believe it's only like 50% of the actual value. Actually, let's just go to this real quick. Yeah, so it's pretty much like 50% of the item's damage and healing. So it's like pretty much slashed in half, but you can still proc it, which is big, right? That 50% is better than 0%. So that's super, super nice. And yeah, I mean, that's really gonna be the end of this tier list. And some of the updates on patch notes. There are a couple other items too that got added to the game, and some other buffs too. Like Isho, for example, got a buff. I don't really think this puts her on the list. She is a little bit annoying. If you want to try her mid or even support, be my guest. I don't think she's good enough for me to put onto the list, but I have seen her played a couple times, and she is a little annoying. One thing I did actually forget to mention about Fafnir too is that this doesn't really matter too much, but I think it's something nice to add. So Faf's passive got an add-on to it. So on top of its original passive, in his original passive, for those who don't know, is he gains 2 gold per assist/kill that he gets, and this is on minions, jungle camps, like enemy players, all that kind of jazz. But he also not in replacement, but also gains 1 gold per enemy hit with an ability. And during his ult, he gains 2 additional gold per enemy hit with an ability. And this also counts with your 2. So if you 2 yourself, right, or you 2 an ally, and your ally hits somebody, it'll give you that gold, or you hit somebody with your auto attack, it'll give you that gold. In any case, yeah, I mean, that's a decent passive. But yeah, so those are pretty much like the main things I want to go over. Lance, I think, is another top ban. I kind of forgot to put him up here, but I think Lance is really solid ban right now. And of course, like Susano, Thor, if you want to as well. If you're playing a character like Merlin or Thoth, Susano's really solid ban, that kind of jazz. But yeah, this is who I think is really strong. Definitely, like I said, try out Faf. This character, if you're support, feels amazing. ADC, try out Oleron, feels great. Jungle, try out, make sure you play Lance. Where did I put? Oh, up here. Try out Lance or Bastet. These two feel amazing. If you're mid lane, play Zeus, bro. Try the Zeus, try the Raijin. I'm assuming you guys have already been playing Thoth and Merlin and all that kind of jazz. Try the Zeus, try the Raijin. So let me know how they feel. And then, of course, if you're soul lane and you want to win games, pick this guy. This guy's amazing. Pick this guy, or even pick this guy. These 3 are really good. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and the tier list and sort of like the patch notes breakdown. I didn't break down everything from the patch notes, but I broke down what I thought was like most relevant at the very least, and that applied to the characters I was talking about. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next video, see ya.